Hello, and welcome to our session today on mentoring to advance STEM. We will be together for about the next 25 minutes in a conversation around mentoring with educators and with students. My name is Dr. Jennifer Williams, and I am coming to you today from the United States. I live in Florida. I am a professor and an author and the executive director of Take Action Global. I'm also the founder of the Teach SDGs organization. And if you are not yet familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, we will talk a little bit about that today. So first off, I want to thank the organization for inviting me in to speak and share with you all today from around the world. I know that it takes a lot of time and thought to put together an international conference for educators, so I'm very honored to be with you here for this session. I wanted to share a little bit of information on how we can continue to keep in contact after today's session. So you can find me at jenwilliamsedu.com, and I am very active on social media, so please feel free to find me on Twitter or Instagram at jenwilliamsedu. Once you're there, you'll find that I share with several hashtags, and one is Teach SDGs. One is Teach Boldly, the title of my book with ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, and Take Action EDU, connected to the work I do with student activism with my nonprofit organization. So we have a few objectives for our session today aligned to the conference theme. So first, I'd like to share some pathways for action and innovation, particularly around STEM and mentoring. Then also to share on some of my mentoring experiences, and then ways that I have been able to partner and collaborate with international classrooms all around the world. So we'll be talking about some of those ideas and hopefully leaving you with some practical ways that you can implement these types of activities with your students. I'd love to start today by talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. And so if we're talking about STEM, for me, this framework offered by the United Nations really creates a pathway for classrooms, no matter what level, what content area, or where you are in the world, to be able to take action. So if you're not familiar yet with these goals, we all came together in the year 2015 to work as these 17 goals. And you can see we have our very own goal with quality education, SDG 4. But when we're talking about STEM, we're looking at climate action, life below water, life on land, clean energy, clean water. We can also think about STEM through the lens of poverty, hunger, good health, looking at data and analytics, moving forward through research, and of course through action. Now, as I mentioned, I do a lot of work with the SDGs and social good. And for me as an educator, social good wasn't necessarily part of my pre-service teacher training. So when I got interested in using social good practices within my classroom, starting first with K-12, then moving to university, I looked to the profession of social work to guide the way. So as defined in the profession of social work, social good refers to services or products that promote human well-being on a large scale. And then if we go deeper, we have these three anchor themes offered by social work of environmental justice and sustainability, social inclusion, peace, harmony, and collaboration. And so we'll talk a lot about these today, particularly with environmental justice and sustainability as it relates to mentoring. So here what I've done is this is how I think about my instructional practice today. So when we think of traditional education of consumption of information, teacher in front of the classroom, we're really starting to see some interesting things come around the progression from consumption to creation, which I think is pretty great. But what I'd love to see us do is move forward from not just creating, but creating with a purpose. So how can we get our students and the teachers we work with to take action on those ideas within the learning process? For us as instructional designers, because with teachers, if we're a mentor or mentee, we're now not just on the receiving end of the instructional design process, we all are becoming creators of content. So if we look at best practice, how can we create with intention to enable potential? So what are those learning experiences and materials that we're using and creating? How are we supporting our students to acquire and apply that knowledge and skills? And then how can we create a culture of learning and mentorship so we're always continuing to iterate and develop even after we've created that content? For me, I've been doing a lot of work around virtual exchange. So how can we as educators work in online virtual spaces, recognizing that we have these advanced technologies, designing our curricula around this idea of taking action, and then facilitating exchange through development of relationships. So virtual exchange really becomes the nexus of all three of these areas. And I'm doing this through the lens of environmental justice and social good. So today I'm going to share with you about these different levels of mentorship that I was just able to experience in our global project called the Climate Action Project, where we were able to work with mentoring at the levels of educators, so the teachers who we were working with, our student interns, so students who have graduated from their high school programs and are moving into university, and then students age 5 all the way up through 20. And so first, let's start with teachers. And as we think about what does mentoring look like when we're working with experienced teachers in practice. And the project that we just completed was called the Climate Action Project, where we welcomed over 2 million students to join from over 138 countries. Now, this was a 6-week project. And we had students working through this level of inquiry where they were examining the causes of climate change, the effects. They were creating their own solutions. But we weren't having them work in isolation. We were trying to find ways that they could work in those environments of digital spaces to connect with other students. And so you see here, this is a general outline of the work that we were doing. So week 1, they were examining causes of climate change, and then they were working together to create the ultimate list of causes of climate change. Then we moved to week 2, which was effects, and we had a global map of climate change effects. We started to bring it in where they were thinking about climate change at the local levels, out to global, where they were having class-to-class virtual exchanges. They then thought about solutions, creating their second ultimate list, but here of solutions for climate change. Week 5 had them working with mentoring, which we'll talk about, through trusted expert webinars and their feedback sessions. And then finally, we had actions, where we met together in an online celebration of learning, which was our Climate Action Day. So first, for our teachers weren't working in isolation. So we had Climate Action Project classrooms, we had Climate Action Project educators. But for us, as we were designing this STEM project, we wanted to figure out ways that we could incorporate mentorship to ensure that these teachers, who many of them were this is their first time with global collaboration. This was their first time doing projects around climate change. So they were learning as they were going. So what we decided to do was to build out intentionally a mentorship program. And so we had different types of mentors. One, we had ambassadors. Now, our ambassadors were working from their local region. So we had ambassadors from different countries. And so if we had different languages, then those teachers would have an ambassador that would be able to assist them as they were seeking out some information. And then we also had facilitators. And now our facilitators were assigned groups of classrooms, and they were acting as that ongoing support coach throughout the entire 6 weeks. So they were assuming different roles as a motivator. They were a resource. So if teachers were wondering how to use certain technologies or needing support, they had a go-to in the facilitator. And they were also acting as a coach, so sharing on best instructional practices, helping to troubleshoot if need be, and encouraging our classrooms along the way so they could successfully make it to week 6 of taking action. We also had a unique opportunity this semester where we partnered with an organization called Global Citizen Academy. And Global Citizen Academy had students working in internship opportunities for their gap year. So they had just left the high school program and they were moving to university, but because of the pandemic, they were in a year of hold. So we had 6 interns join with us. You can see some of them here. So we had Caroline from the United States, Lena from Hong Kong, Hila and Herman, both from Singapore, and Abby from the UK. Now, we decided to not just have our mentors be doing work in the background for us. We really wanted them front and center. We wanted our students and our teachers to view them as leaders and as mentors. So after many discussions with each of them, learning about their passions, their interests, and their experiences, we assigned roles. So Caroline headed up our class-to-class virtual exchange project as part of week 3. Lena was particularly interested in social media and the environment, so she became our social media lead. So she was running all of our Twitter and Instagram campaigns. Abby loved to write, and so she became our lead storyteller and was leading our blog. Herman's interested in research, but he also had a keen ability to lead. So he led our translations of all of our curricula into 15 different languages. So you think of Herman, a newly graduated high school student, and he's now leading a team of 15 educators from all around the world who speak different languages. And then Hila joined us as a coordinator for our week 5 mentorship program, where we were having our interns mentor the students. And she also joined us in any international presentations that we were doing. So our classrooms then, and our teachers, but our students became the mentees for our mentors you see here as our interns. And in this first picture, you can see Hila. She was joining me as our co-moderator for our Climate Action Day. So as we're talking about environmental justice and ways that we around the world can take action for the planet, she was there with us interviewing experts and leaders around the world. We also all joined in an international conference talking about ways that youth can lead the way as mentors. And so we were here, you see all of our student interns speaking to groups of teachers. and sharing with them about the power of autonomy and the power of having ownership over projects. So these students really just are brilliant and able to take on quite complex tasks. And finally, thinking about mentorship at the level of the students. So of course, our teachers, our ambassadors, our facilitators, and our student interns are going to be serving as mentors for our 2 million students. But we had a question of how can our students, as they're working through this environmental justice program, become mentors to each other, and not just class to class through instructional design. So we were constantly working to find ways that students could request feedback from each other, that students could work always through this process of inquiry as they're doing their study. But how can we find opportunities for our students to then view international classrooms of their peers also as their mentors? So a few weeks into the project, we created this student mentor program. And this was where classroom teachers could sign up. They would select a day. And then what we would do was help facilitate to have either a class-to-class virtual exchange opportunity. So I'm here in Florida and maybe you're in Cambodia. Our classrooms would join. We would have a shared experience. My students would share about their work and request feedback from your students, also asking about different perspectives. So life here in Florida will look very different, and we have different challenges when it comes to thinking about climate change. And so getting feedback from people who live and look differently from us. We also had opportunities for virtual exchange with class to intern. So as our students were creating their solutions, we invited them to also sign up, and I'll share with you here. We have our guidelines for our student mentors to then come in for a 30-minute session with one of our student interns. And so our interns have been working in environmental justice for several years through their high school programs, all different parts of the world. So these were the guidelines. So as I mentioned, Gila led this project. And so she and I worked together. So I'm mentoring Gila, who's mentoring a team of mentors who are then going to be mentoring students. So many different levels of mentorship. So she wrote this letter to them, really trying to set them up for success. So for a lot of them, this was the first time that they were leading a 30-minute virtual exchange. So we have a sample schedule. We have ideas for them, inviting them to be a sounding board. We encourage you to please lead the students to answers rather than giving them yourselves. We want this to be a positive educational experience for the students, an extension of their learning in the classroom. So then we're guiding them through some of the technology questions. So they were doing this over Zoom. And then we had a sample script. So for our classrooms, we wanted to make sure that they had a guided experience. So we said to our mentor students to start the conversation, "Hi, my name is, I'm joining from where I am, and I'm also an intern for Take Action Global. Today's meeting will be recorded and our schedule will be." So we talked to them about safety guidelines, also cultural considerations, and then tech troubleshooting. So what we always feel with any of our mentoring session is to plan ahead. We can't prepare enough. And so we think about all different types of tech troubleshooting issues that may arise. So we think here, because we're working with international classrooms. So if there are language issues, here are some tips for our mentors. What happens if your class doesn't show up? So instead of just, leaving after 10 seconds, you should wait 3 minutes, send a message, wait 3 more minutes, and then send another email apologizing they were unable to make it, but we wish them a great rest of the project. What happens if your own Wi-Fi fails? Or what happens if their Wi-Fi fails? What happens if the teacher is not on the call? Or if a student says something inappropriately? Or if a teacher asks you something you don't know the answer to. So we had all of our mentors share the recording. And then we have a survey that we used for both our mentors and the mentee classrooms. So we could then gather data, analyze ways to move forward, and to consider things we could improve upon within our program. So that gives you just kind of a glimpse into our program that we did with our students in terms of mentoring. So as you can see here, this program, this was a 6-week program. We were working at scale, so we knew we had quite the number of different groups of individuals that we were going to be working to ensure had success. So we needed to consider